Hey folks, how's it going? This is Mr. Murray coming to you with a Do Now activity for March 24th, 2020, Course 1 Honors, okay? So at this point, we spent the past week, last week, talking about the methods of factoring. We looked at cases when the A value was 1, we looked at when A was more than 1, and then we looked at some special cases like the difference of squares, perfect squares, and greatest common factors. At the end of the week, we started talking about how do we use this to solve. And that is going to be the major theme of this week, starting with yesterday's lesson, which was an introduction to solving. Now I'd like you to solve these three equations here. Okay, so we've got 6r squared minus 13r plus 6 is 0. D squared plus 3d minus 4 is 14. And m squared plus 5m plus 6 is equal to negative 2m. One thing you're going to notice about this is the second and the third equation, okay, they look a little bit different than we've seen. So if you haven't seen this yet, I really strongly recommend that you go back and you take a look at my video from the other day, because yesterday I talked about some fundamentals of solving, and one of them has to do with what the right hand side needs to be equal to. And if you don't set it correctly for these, it's going to make your life very difficult. All right, so what I want you to do, I want you to pause the video. I want you to try to solve all three of these equations. All right, and then when you're ready, unpause, and I'll show you how to solve. All right, so I'm going to head on down, and we will begin. So first, I noticed that I'm equal to 0 already. That's what I want, because remember, the goal is to turn it into factored or intercept form. If I can turn it into factored form, then finding the zeros is a matter of making each one equal to 0 one at a time. So here, I noticed that, let's see if I can factor out the A. Okay, well, so 6 goes into 6, but here's the problem. There's no common factor here except 1. So I'm not going to be able to factor anything out, but it's always worth checking, because at worst you find that nothing can come out. At best you make the problem a little bit easier for yourself. Okay, but you should get the same answers either way. So I'll put my 6r squared top left, 6 in the bottom right, and now it's up to me to figure out how to factor this. So the good news is I know that 6 breaks down in only basically two ways. We got a 6 and a 1, or a 2 and a 3, and I say basically because, you know, in theory I could switch these terms around, right? I'll show you 1 and 6, 3 and 2. Doesn't matter the order of the terms. What I know is, again, using my intuition, I know that the two numbers I'm looking for to go in my blanks, my constants, are either both positive or both negative, because a negative times a negative and a positive times a positive are both positive. I know most likely they're both going to be negative to add up to a negative. And so now I'll start to play around with some possibilities. I'll choose 2 and 3. So I'll choose 2r and 3r. That gives me 6r squared. Let's see if I can make 13. I think I can do it. So what if this is 3 and this is 2? So then what I'd get is, and it's going to have to be negative 3 and negative 2 because I want a negative. So I'm going to get negative 9r, and this is going to be negative 4r, and notice that negative 9r minus 4r is 13r. So essentially, it comes down to solving this problem of 2r minus 3, 3r minus 2 is equal to 0. So we're going to set them equal to 0 and solve. So if 2r minus 3 is 0, right, everything will be 0. So I'll add the 3. I'll divide by 2. And so my first r, you could say, is either equal to 3 halves, or I'll take 1.5 since they're equivalent. Okay, the other one, I'm going to do the same thing. So I've got 3r minus 2 is 0. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do 3r equals 2. So r equals 2/3. Here you do need to do 2/3. I don't want to see any 0.66 or 0.67. It's not really what 2/3 is. Okay, so you can't say that. 1.5, the decimal actually stops. Like if you do it on your calculator, you get 1.5 and that's all you get. That's the difference with why you can do that. Okay, so on the second one, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I can just make a little bit of space here. I apologize for that. I just want to make sure we've got enough space to work with. So I'll take this one and I'll move it down a little bit. All right. So now the big issue here, and what's new today, is that notice that this is equal to 14. So here's what happens if you factor and you don't make it 0. So what I've got is I have d, and so I need two numbers to essentially multiply to -4 and add to +3, and that is going to be +4 and -1. But notice, -4 and 1 are not the answers, because -4 and 1, well, that's going to give me 0, but 0 is not equal to 14. So if I do it like this, here's my predicament. I now need to find the right value that will plug in and get me one number here. And so for example, I would need maybe this to be 14 and this to be 1. But here's the problem. When you plug in 10, here's 14, here's 9. So we could be playing around with combos forever before we ever find two numbers to multiply to 14. So that's going to be a struggle here. And so that's why instead of doing it like this, the first step you're going to do is you're going to ensure the right-hand side is 0. And if it's not 0, you're going to make it 0. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do -14 here, -14 here, d squared plus 3d minus 18 is equal to 0. Now this problem becomes a little bit more straightforward, because now it's equal to 0. So as it turns out, I can do d plus 6, d minus 3. 6 times -3 is -18. 6 minus 3 is 3. Okay, so now the difference between this, and I'm just going to bring the last problem back up to show you what I mean. All right, so here I'm playing around with combos forever. I'm trying to get 14. Here I'm just trying to get 0, which means that one of the answers is -6 and the other one is 3. Now to show you that it works, if I plug in 6 here, or -6, I get 2 and I get -7, or rather -2 and -7, which multiply to 14. So in theory that works. And here I get 7 and I get 2, which also multiplies to get 14. But here's the thing. You're going to have to do, look, I know 7 and 2 are 14, but you're going to have to be working forever just to get a combination to work out. Whereas here, when it's equal to 0, you're just making each of them 0, one at a time. So remember, you always make the right side equal to 0. Okay, it's -6 and 3 are our answers. All right, finally, I'm going to expose you to a little scenario with what happens if it's a letter instead of a number. The same thing, right? I'm going to make the right-hand side equal to 0. And remember what I said, a negative a, or rather a positive a, that is a positive m squared thing, keeps wrong answers away. So if this was a negative m squared, I would be moving everything to the other side, because you want your quadratic thing, that is, you want the thing with the squared to always be positive. And if you need to move it over, you have the freedom to do that, because this is an equation. With factoring, we talked about taking the negative out to make it easier for yourself. Well, now that we're solving, you've got a little bit more flexibility. So here, this cancels and nothing is left. Here, I've got m squared plus 7m plus 6 is 0. And this will factor as m plus 6, m plus 1. Okay, if I had not thought carefully here, what I would have gotten is m, and I don't even know if it's going to work. Actually, it will. M plus 3, m plus 2. But this is tough, right? How do I get this to work out? Here I can see either m has to be -6 or m has to be -1, because if m is -6, this is 0, so everything's 0. If m is -1, the right is 0, so everything's 0. Here, if I didn't know these, I would be playing around with numbers forever and trying to figure it out. So remember, always set one side equal to 0. Which side you set equal to 0 does not matter, but think about some of the fundamentals. Keep your a value positive. Positive a keeps wrong answers away. And think about what's easier. All right? You want to move stuff over as quickly as you can. If it doesn't matter, right? Work smarter, not harder. Make the choice that gets you the positive A in the end and gets you kind of the least amount of work, because the more operations you do, the more opportunity you have for error. All right, so I hope you found this to be helpful to you. Hopefully you got the right answers, even for the ones where it wasn't equal to 0. If so, great job. All right, keep it up as we work through the lesson today, and keep those questions coming. And remember, you can do it. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to love math, and have a wonderful day.